Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. I'm Jason Abrams, and this is the place where we lift the curtain on the world of real estate like never before. Every week, I sit down with visionaries, pirates, and mavericks. We're here to document, demonstrate, and most importantly, demystify their game-changing models and systems. What secrets propel them to the top? And how are they living their dreams? This is about passion, it's about strategy, but above all, it's about real, tangible success. So buckle up and let's dive in. This is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. It is that time of year, friends, when everybody works on business planning. Now, last week you listened to David Huffaker, and he laid out step by step exactly how to go plan your business for the new year. I'm excited because today I'm joined by a bunch of the hosts from the Empire Building podcast. Each one of these ladies has built a giant business and is living a giant life. We're not going to go into exactly how to business plan. We are going to go into the hacks. Friends, we are going to talk about the tricks. We are going to talk about the secrets. We are going to talk about those little things that make all the difference, that turn business planning from a mundane thing into a vibrant thing that can absolutely change your year. Sit back and buckle up. These are the Empire Builders. And I am joined today by Tiffany, I'm joined by Sarah, I have Kymber, and I have Seychelle. Now, you all know that these are the voices in my head. I listen to every episode of their show, and I think you're crazy if you don't. So let's jump right in. Seychelle, how are you?
Jason, thank you so much for having us. And I would be remiss if I said we are missing Wendy Papazan, our other fellow co-host. So I'm going to give her a shout out too. And we're so excited to be here today because we listen to your podcast. We love it. We love being a sister podcast of yours. And we're so excited to be here today because I think all of us realize that we're going to be talking about something that is paramount to your business, that without it, you're missing the entire game.
100%. And if I ever had to be a little brother to anybody, it's all of you. And I couldn't be more excited about it because y'all are like mentors to me. I've watched you on stage before I was on the stage, and I've learned so much. So let's continue the trend. This time of year, everyone rushes to try to figure out what they're going to do next year. And the challenge is we've read statistics that 91% of everybody who sets a New Year's resolution abandons that resolution by January 15th. For those of you listening, I'll ask you the simple question. Have you ever joined a gym in January? Perfect. Now that we are all in a dark place, let's move forward. We want to make your lives better. And the Empire Builders are going to walk us through how they think about business planning.
The first thing that we all agreed is actually the most important thing you must do. You have got to check yourself before you goal yourself. And what that means, Jason, and all four of us like unanimously agreed with this, is that you have got to take some time before you actually do your full business planning to get in alignment with your personal goals, to get white space with what that needs to look like for success for you and your business, your role, and your relationships, and what the business provides you.
Now, for all of you, those driving 110 miles an hour in your Teslas and Range Rovers, you don't have to slow down. I'm taking the notes. If you want to get the notes, they come out every Thursday. You go to MREAnotes.com, MREAnotes.com, and we will get them for you. So the first step is check yourself before you plan yourself. I love that. You said something interesting to me. You said what it provides you. Help me better understand that, because if I didn't know better, I would say it provides me money. Is there something else?
Yeah, I think when you look at your business, we talk about like building a big business, but more importantly, an even bigger life on the podcast. And so if you don't slow down enough to ask the important questions, if you don't take a minute to, when we say a minute, we really probably mean like a full day or more, like take some serious time to do that reflection. How do you know that you're actually going in the right direction? And I'm going to let my co-host jump in here because they've got some great advice on this too.
Tiffany?
Yeah, looking at the goals of am I just in a reckless pursuit of more? Or is this really the life that I want to create for myself, for my team members, for my family, all those things? Because as empire builders, we often are bent towards growth and more and setting a bigger goal for the next year and realizing why and how could I want more for myself in other parts of my life? Or how can I set up my business such that it supports hobbies or time I want to spend with my kids or that I need to spend taking care of my parents? Or this may be a huge building year for you. And you just want to set a killer goal in the business and you can go all in because your life supports that right now. But when you don't ask yourself the question, why am I doing this? Truly is when you lose yourself into something a year, 5 years, a decade that you never really wanted. And so this time of recentering and focusing. And a day isn't long enough in my mind. It's a multi-step process of write it down. Why am I doing it? Come back tomorrow and ask the same thing and see if the answer is the same next week. Because I know that I can very often just be I could do that. I could do that. I could do that over there. And then I just add all these things in that were never what I set out to do. And this goal setting, every year having this intentional thought of what do I really want my year to look like?
I think this is a really important idea. And Gary says that a life lived by comparison is a life not well lived. And by the way, if you're new to the show, when we say Gary, we're talking about Gary Keller. Him and Dave Jenks and Jay Papasan wrote a great book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and our show, this is the namesake. So Gary says that because oftentimes, and Sarah, I'd love your thoughts on this, you wake up in the morning in our industry, you look around and you see units and volume walking across every stage. And you wake up and think those are the only two measures by which we mark. Y'all are saying that might not be right.
Well, yeah, because you can't pour from an empty glass, right? We say this a lot. And as a leader of your company, of your organization, you're setting the tone for everyone else. And for me, well over a decade, I led exactly how Tiffany is describing in terms of, just the pursuit of more. But meanwhile, I was 100 pounds overweight, missed so many of my kids' bedtimes. And I looked up one day and that's not the life that I wanted. And it was because of this amazing circle and the Empire Building podcast that really helped me realize that I need to be looking at a bigger life in addition to the big business. It's not an or. And I think that that's something that I really want everyone to hear me today and us today. Okay, we're not saying it needs to be an or. You can choose a big life or you can choose a big business. What Tiffany and Say are saying is that you need to make sure that it's in alignment with where you're at right now in your life. Because as business leaders, as business owners, life happens to us just like they do our team members, right? So it's so important to get that time away by yourselves to be asking yourself these questions as you prepare for your team advance, right? Your team retreat. The other thing that I highly recommend that you do during this white space. So we call it white space at Empire Building Podcast. And what we mean by that is no distractions. It's you and your brain. A book that has had a really big impact on many of us is called The Road Less Stupid. And in the book, he talks about how the best consultant, the best coach, the best mentor for your business is actually you. But you don't ask yourself enough questions. You don't take enough time to answer enough questions. And so one of the things that I always do before our team advance in preparation for that day is I think through, where are my people at in terms of emotion, in terms of what they're going through? What trends am I seeing? And so take time to figure out, where is your team at? Where is your business at in terms of mindset? And then create a theme. And I always say, go with a positive theme. There could be something negative that you're trying to weed out. Okay, how can you spin it in a positive way? Like victim mentality, but we're saying be the difference, right? Is an example.
I think that's really smart. And by the way, if you haven't read that book that she mentions, The Road to Less Stupid, that's Keith Cunningham. And in the book, he says you don't need to do anything smarter. You just need to stop doing dumb things. Do less dumb, not more smart, which is an easier equation for most of us than just getting brilliant. So I love that.
So true.
Kymber, let me ask you this. This idea, and then we'll move on, but this check yourself before you plan yourself. How exactly do you do it? Because I know that there's people like me out there that, like, I spent 20 minutes trying to figure out what they have for lunch today. I don't know how to do this self-introspective stuff. How do you sit down and do it?
I'm with you, Jason. Sometimes I'm like, wait, I have to sit quietly and but there's 5,000 things going on. I have lots of things to do. Where am I supposed to, find that time? And so I think putting that in the calendar, creating the space for it, which is the same thing we would say as your goal setting, right? You need to be offsite. You need to go to a different location. You change your environment, right? To allow that to take place. And I think you really have to look back to look forward. So I know when you're running fast and a lot of people who are in high growth mode, you see the problems, you see the gaps, you see the things you want to solve for. And so personally, I think going back, literally, right, one of our hacks, both in Empire Builders Her Best Life, has been a joy list. So I literally have a joy folder on my phone. And so when something amazing happens, I drop the picture in there. And so my first reflection is to just go back and reflect on the year, which everybody knows how to do, right? And if you can't do it, pick up your phone, right? Pick up your social media. Where were the moments that you experienced great joy, that your team had a big win? So I start there and I'm like, okay, so where were the places that I won personally and professionally? Where did the team win? Because those are the things what did you remember? So that you're actually saying, what do I want more of in my life and in my business going forward? So for me, that's been a really easy place to kind of get into that mode. And then you're asking those questions, right? Where do I want to be able to spend more time? If I'm sitting here again in the same period of time next year, and I'm saying it was an amazing 2025, what has happened in the business, right? Where did I spend my time? So I think being able to say that allows us to then get into the mode, and then the rest of it begins to flow.
I love this idea of leading with joy. I read a study the other day, and it made the argument that when you look backwards, time speeds up. But when you look forward, time slows down. And I'll prove it to you. It said, I want you all to think back to high school. And you do that really quickly, and then you say, wow, it's flown by since then. It's went really quickly. Now look forward 10 years. And it's oh my gosh, I can't focus on the same thing for the next 10 years. That's so much time. It went on to explain that the brain does this as a protection mechanism. And the reason that it speeds up the past is so you don't relive all the trauma that you experienced. And it doesn't do that for the future because it hasn't yet experienced any new trauma. And I thought it was a really interesting way to think about it because most people lead with the failure or the trauma or the bad news of the year. I got to fix blank because it sucked. And you're looking up and saying, I want more joy, not less negative.
Yeah, run towards the joy, right?
That's so good. It's a new t-shirt, Chase Joy. You heard it here first. Don't try to go take it. We are trademarking it as we speak. All right, so I got this idea. I've sat down, I've centered, I've let the noise stop, and I figured out what I'm doing. Sarah?
I want to add a Sarah hack for how to do white space because I am addicted to my phone. I'm talking addicted. I have a major problem, okay, where if I'm in a position to have my phone in front of me, I will not have white space. So what I do is I do a drive. So there's two places that I cannot have my phone, okay? Driving and getting a massage. Okay, those are the two that is Sarah's white space hacks, okay? And so for driving, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and I just literally drive with no music, not listening to anyone, okay? I'm listening to me, my brain. And I ask myself questions about the business, about the year, about the theme that I'm seeing, okay? And then I voice memo into a note on my phone. But no one can disturb me. No one can get access to me. Because what I learned is that if I am in a place where people can get access to me, it's not white space. It's actually lots of people's faces space, which I have no thinking time. And so you really, really, really need whatever you need to do to force yourself to have thinking time, do it. Your business will, I'm telling you, it will be exponential when you make this a priority in your business.
Tiffany.
Well, all of us do white space differently. So for me, I need to actually disengage my brain a little bit because if it's just me and my brain, there's just a lot going on in my head and I'll get distracted or confused or I just don't know what I'm thinking. So I actually book myself to go to classes. So I sit in a classroom and learn something. I work with my notebook with 2 sheets. So I'm taking notes for whatever I'm learning in the class. And then my last sheet in my notebook, I'm always flipping back because that's where I'm actually the ideas come when I'm like sort of thinking about something else. And so like I'll go into a class with, all right, I want to figure out what I'm going to do, what I really want this year to look like. But I'm going to a class about for sale by owners, or I'm going to a class about something financial, but my brain disengages there. And so I have this really weird white space where there's a lot of noise coming at me, but it's what allows my brain to disengage at some way. And that's where the good ideas come.
I love that. It sounds like any way you do it, it needs to get done. Okay, so I've gotten my head right and I'm ready to go into this thing. What are the tricks? What are the hacks? What would you tell me your biggest advice on it? Seychelle, I'm going to start with you.
I have a quick one and then a bigger one. The quick one is whether it's, again, a party of one or a really large organization you're running, most of us want to go and get a full week's worth of work done before we walk into the business planning. And so I'm going to encourage you to make sure you're giving yourself a little bit of breathing room and some bandwidth, whether it is 15 minutes or 20 minutes in between each of your appointments just to take a breath. But like so many times I've walked into business planning completely jacked up and like, because I literally just did a week's worth of work walking into the business planning. So you've got to like be able to slow yourself down enough to lead the team to the water, to where everybody is going to go. So that would be my hack number one. Like on the bigger picture, I think it is to make sure that when you're now in your goal setting session, something that we all were talking about coming into today was in this market, the leading indicators and figuring out what the wins look like on the leading indicator activity can be the goal sometimes. Like a lot of times we announce like our sales, or like you were saying, Jason, our volume and our revenue is the goal. But sometimes when a market is shifting really quickly, that is a lagging indicator from the activity that they were really doing at the beginning. And so what we've done last year and we're continuing for this next year is to make the leading indicator the pieces that they can control, because we know the dominoes will fall in the back end. And so that's a big piece for us.
For some of our listeners that might not be as clear on the difference between a leading indicator and a lagging indicator, give me a few examples in the real estate business of a leading indicator.
So, Jason, you and I are doing goal setting. Some leading indicators that you can control as a salesperson are: how many conversations are you going to have this week with people that might want to buy or sell real estate? And even more specifically, what type of people are you going to talk to? And I say that because I have different team members on my team. Some are incredible with their networking and their personal relationships, and they can move a pinky finger and business like shoots out of their pinky finger. And I have other team members that don't have as big of a natural database, and they have to go after people maybe that are people that tried to list or sell their home before that didn't succeed, or for sale by owners, or maybe they're door knocking around their open houses. That might take more contacts to get the same result as somebody who grew up in Dallas-Fort Worth and has an entire database here. So really defining what your leading measure is, which is your conversations, and how many of those you have to have in order to be able to get to an appointment to have business, and then from there to get contracts signed to work together, and then to purchase a home. But the end result, the lagging indicator would be they bought or sold a home. But the leading indicator for us is how many people do you need to talk to and what type? How many hours are you going to spend doing that? And then how can we help you with your conversion to get better at it as you're going? Because those things you can control and measure on a daily basis. The lagging indicator will come from how good you get at those two things.
Love that. Sarah, what are your hacks? What are your tricks? How do you think about it?
So the day of the goal setting day or team advance or retreat, wins, and more wins. Okay. Most of us lead sales organizations. Salespeople, right? I teach this to my leaders at Empower Home every day. Okay. I'm going to show you guys, but I know that our listeners can't see this. But recognition leads to the result that you want. Result then leads to you recognize those results. And then it's a circle. But it all starts with recognition. So the day of the advance, you want to be talking about the wins that you guys had that year. You want to shine the light on the team members that represented those wins the most. You want to give out swag or special time with you or a date night with their spouse, and you want to recognize them publicly for the wins that they had, both as a company, as a team, but also go granular with your people and recognize their wins that they had and shine the light on each team member, as many as you can, because those wins and recognition will actually produce more results. It can get so discouraging in this business, in the real estate world. Every January 1, when I see our tracker go to 0, families served, and we just served 2,200 families and we're starting with 0. It's like, oh, can we do this again? Or do it and so you want to make sure to recognize all the good that happened throughout the year.
Do you ever get worried that you're recognizing too many people, or you're not recognizing enough people? Or if I recognize John, then Jimmy's going to be disappointed. Do you feel like you have to democratize recognition?
I was going to ask that same thing of does everyone get a medal or a cookie, or how do you do this?
No.
If you know Sarah, not everyone's getting a cookie. I'll tell you that.
No way. No. You recognize the most important results. So for example, listings taken, that's the most important number that we track at Empower Home. Okay, well, who took the most listings? Who had the most growth in listings taken? Okay, they get recognized. Not everyone that took a listing gets recognized. They get recognized. So you're choosing the categories that are most important to your business and then shining the light on them. Because to me, you got to get results. The whole purpose of goal setting is for results. Okay. And so you want to recognize the results that you're wanting to see more of in the coming year.
Love it. What else?
The other big thing that we focus on during the advance is progress over perfection. And so recognizing progress being made, for example, I don't know about you guys, but this year as I'm going into our advance, it's been discouraging because there's lots of areas that we have not had progress. We have not grown. It can almost feel depressing as the leader going into it because you're like, okay, we're going to set this goal that we're not going to achieve again. And it's I'm just being real. It's hard times right now. It is hard. Okay. And you can find progress in the midst of the hard, and finding that progress and then setting the tone that next year is going to be about progress over perfection. Perfection would be hitting the goal, right? So let's say we hit the goal for 2,500 homes. That would be perfection, okay? Progress would be if we served 2,200 families last year and we served 2,250. That's 50 more families that we served in a year compared to the year prior. And that should be focused on and celebrated. So for me right now, how I'm sort of navigating these times is progress over perfection. Perfection is the enemy of progress. And so if you're not progressing, it's because you are focused so much on perfection.
What you're articulating is so timely, right? Because every time this year, everyone pulls out the book, The Gap and the Gain, and you look at it and you ask the question, am I focusing on the gap between me and where I want to be, or the gain that I made on the way there? And the happiest people are the ones that focus on the gains, not the gaps. That doesn't mean that the gap doesn't have to be filled. It just means that if you didn't fill it, you didn't lose, fail, zero-sum thinking. You focus on what you did accomplish. Tiffany, I'm coming to you. I want to hear your hacks, your tricks on business planning. What do I need to do?
I'm going really tactical for the numbers of business planning and thinking about the listeners that we have that maybe aren't running big organizations yet. And I'm thinking back to what were the things that I used to do? So number one, I would say be optimistic about the outcomes, but be conservative with your numbers. When I was doing my business planning, and when I still do it, I'll give you an example. Right now, our team's average sales price is $475. And when I'm moving into business planning, I'm going to use the number $450. Because I'm not going to assume the numbers are going to be what they were last year. And I did this every year, even as the market was increasing. This is not a pessimistic market statement. This is just, I want to know that I could hit my goal at 450. So when I'm at 475, I'm great. Or when it becomes 500, I'm going to exceed what I've done. I do not want to set my metrics up with really optimistic things. You know, we do a lot of math in business planning when we walk through that economic model. And at every stage, I round down. Like if it says I need to get 7.9 of something, the number 7 goes on my sheet. Like be conservative with your numbers, because then you're setting up your habits to exceed your goal, not for you to be like, oh, shoot. You know, a builder came to me with affordable housing opportunities, and I got to do a development with $300,000 houses that are serving the community. And now I'm going to be below my goal. Like, I don't want to set myself up for that at all. And so I'm using conservative numbers when I do all of my business planning. And then the other thing that I did when I was just me was I always set my goal on families served. I know that our models are often set up with GCI as the first number that we think about, and you need to know them. But I always started in the middle at families served because I knew myself, and I knew that if my goal was about dollars in my pocket, I would treat clients differently. And so talk about that reflection. Like I knew that I would treat $1 million house different than a $200,000 house because they were getting me to my goal faster. And so I didn't allow that to be a part of my goals. I set families served, and then I budgeted for myself. I budgeted for my business around that GCI number or that net profit number coming out of it.
I think that's great. I'm going to ask you a follow-up, because this show is made for all of the mega agents out there in the world. That's why I think everybody likes it. How do you do it now? What's your hack today? Because you're living in multiple states. You're in the Big Apple, then you're in Tennessee. You have teams. I mean, you have a huge life. You travel around and do anything you want. You're like my hero. So how do you do it now?
Well, I mean, I teach my team to do it just like that. Like, what is their goal of families served? We're going to use a conservative number. And when I have new agents coming on my team, they don't get to use the conversion rates that my buyer's agent that's been on my team for 3 years has. Like, we're going to use really conservative numbers because we use this plan to set up their habits for the rest of the year. And then I would echo Sarah also on make it fun. Like, we just finished our retreat and we had a hard year. Like, this was a hard year. It was hard to find those positive numbers. I mean, I only had 2 positive numbers to talk about. One of them was we upped our set to held. We started the year at 52% and we're ending it at 78%. I know. That's huge.
Nice.
Did that translate to as many families served? Nope. But that's what we talked about at the retreat, is that huge progress. And then we took market share in our farm. We now sell twice as many homes as any other agent in the farm. Great. And so we had a lot of hard to deal with too. Like, here's the reality of what we're facing, and we're not going to retreat. We're going to advance. And so we did that. And then I took them to a gym and we played Nerf Wars, and we shot each other for an hour with Nerf guns because we are going to attack the rest of this year. And so, that's another element that I always add now is, how do we go feel what this feels like with some fun at the end of doing the hard math?
Kymber, coming to you. What are the hacks? What are the tricks? And yours is, I'm fascinated. Let me just tell you, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm about to start eating chocolate in preparation because you do this for giant businesses. You have 5 or 6 different brokerage houses, and you have an agent team, and you got businesses in different states, and you have, you've got a lot going on.
It's a lot of business planning. I was on yes. I literally was like, what year are we? We're not in 2025 yet because we've been business planning for the last 30 days because you got to get ahead of it before you can then get all the way down the line. But really, this idea of understanding and really interrogating. I mean, how many of us lead teams and even market centers where I look up and I ask the sourcing, where did that lead come from? And I've got 80-90% that say SOI. And I'm like, okay, so that doesn't help me know where I need to spend my time. So I had everybody, even at the market center, I said, okay, where did all of our new gross, where did all the agents who joined the brokerage or where did they come from? Let's understand what activity we did that got the highest result. And not just like the top line's good, like, right, the leads coming in, but I actually want to know what made me money in 2024. Where did I actually realize revenue? What activities did I do that gave me money? Like, right, that brought in revenue to any one of those businesses. And in the sales business, it was really interesting, right? Because I had to go and say, I want to know the trigger. Was the trigger because they DM'd you on a social post? Was it because they came to an event? Was it because you hosted something and they interacted with you? Like, what was the trigger that made that person convert to the first conversation about real estate that you had because they actually closed a transaction this year? So we had everybody go all the way back. And one, from a team perspective, this is really helpful when you're trying to define your value proposition, because people start to say SOI and was it theirs? Was it yours? Was it a 36 campaign touch that you do, right, into the data bank for them? Like, you really want to know that, because then you want to actually start to bang on the thing that was driving the result that you want. And it helps to tie value when you're helping people to understand where should they spend their time, but also what activities do you do on their behalf that actually translated into real revenue. And so that exercise of going all the way through, and we're giving each of our team members, whether that's a sales business or at the market center leadership, they've got to do some thinking too before they come in. And so we want them, that's an exercise, that sourcing exercise happens before they walk in the door. And then we're actually using that insight to help us build the plan. And so we're building a plan that's really informed in logic. It's informed in what worked. And so it's fascinating to look at the producing agents that joined our Keller brokerages who were overwhelmingly former KW agents. Like, they had already been with the company, they had left, and they'd come back. Literally more than 50% of our producing agents who joined the company in 2024 had already been with Keller at some point before. So what does that now focus your exercise? Now you actually go double down on your relationships, your follow-up with agents who have previously been with the company. Now in the KW world, that's a lot, but like, that focusing means that we now can triple potentially our impact then versus like, let's just go talk to everybody. So you're just trying to like narrow in. And so that's one of our big hacks, which has been not just to take at surface value what the source code was, but to really understand what led to the activity that actually drove real revenue in the prior year, and then go double or triple that activity.
Gosh, I love that. I think that's brilliant. We spoke to an agent the other day who said, every year they do something similar, which is they cite the source of every one of their closings. Then they are only willing to talk about what the top 3 sources were. So at the end of the year, if source number 1 was sphere of influence, for lack of a better one, and the next one's open houses, and the next one is internet leads, they refuse to have any conversation about anything other than those 3 things. And it's similar to what you're saying.
And you have to have plans around those things. Because I think sometimes we want this variety. And so we're going to go do 10 brand new things that we've never done before. And we're going to hope optimistically that they somehow drive activity. And you abandoned the thing potentially that actually, and in source, I think I do want to like really double click on SOI, because I think a lot of us say that, but you really want to actually understand what was it that led that SOI to show up. Is it that at the client event that like we do these 4 events and that's where the churn was? Is it because we have a really amazing social media and they're all coming in through the funnel there? We all touch our SOI differently. And so you want to know, hey, we do this thing and we really should do a lot more of it, because that actually drove a lot of engagement, not just like the touch, but like what actually said, hey, I want to respond to that post. I want to do like, right, you want to look at what drove the activity.
Perfect. I want to go around the horn again. Seychelle, I go through this process. I use all the hacks. I come out of it with whatever I come out of it with. How do I make it live and breathe throughout the year? Because a lot of times you go through all this and you get a great write-off on the expenses it took to have the forward or the advance or the retreat. And then it's just like a piece of paper that ends up unlaminated in a drawer somewhere. How do you make this live and breathe for the next 12 months?
Yes, in our growth sessions, I start every session with, Jason, I cannot wait to hear what's going on with you. To stay on track, I'm going to start our meeting with your goals, your pipeline, all the things you said you were going to do, because I know you want to make an extra $30,000 by the end of this year. So we're going to talk about that first and what you've done to get there. And then after that, we can talk about what you want to talk about. And we use the 12-week year to follow the cadence. It's been a really good one for us on breaking it down. And so that's what we do is the 12-week year.
Okay, for those of us that have no idea what that means, expand. What is the 12-week year?
The 12-week year is basically a process where you chunk your goals down into one quarter at a time. And so you take your big goals and you break it down into, most quarters actually have 13 weeks. So you have 12 weeks of actual work towards your goals. And then the 13th week is the revisiting, resetting, realigning, and then you prep for the next quarter. And what I love about that is it allows us, like so many times, agents don't look at their goals until midway through the year, or they don't look at what they've done until you're 10 months in. Well, you don't have time to catch up at that point. You're either there or you're not. And so this allows us every single week to take a look at our progress towards the goal. And it also allows us that if we're off on quarter one, we can make up that difference in quarter two in the next set of 12 weeks. And so it allows us to run plays quicker, adapt faster, be more aggressive, where it's not just one plan for the year and I hope you make it. It's every quarter we're assessing where we are towards our relative big goal, what we need to adjust. And if we're ahead of pace, great, let's keep that pace going. If we're behind, we have time to adapt and adjust so that we actually can hit what we want to hit by the end of the year.
I love everything you just said. I had a great coach. His name was Mike Fleming. And he used to say to me, Jason, there's two types of communication. I won't keep doing the accent, but there's formal communication and casual. And he said, Jason, your biggest problem is you skip into casual whenever you're coaching somebody. If you skip the formal communication, which is the discussion about the goals, plans, results, actions, and numbers, and you only go into the casual, you will not bring people forward in their life. Sarah, how do you make these plans real for the next 12 months?
First and foremost, you want to create visuals, if you can, of the goal. We call it the commitment, and put it everywhere. Okay. So for us, we're just like Tiffany, where we focus on families served. That's our language. We don't ever talk volume. Like, people tell me what our volume was when Real Trends comes out. Like, I don't ever look at volume numbers. I always look at family served and then income, because I do need to know we can pay the bills. But you want to put the family served number everywhere. So my favorite exercise that we do at our advance that is sort of the revealing of this is we make a puzzle, a very large puzzle of a number. And every team member writes their big why for the year on a puzzle piece. And at the end of the retreat, we build the puzzle. So the team doesn't actually know what the number is until the end of the day. And each location, so we've got 10 locations, each location builds their puzzle piece, and it's ginormous. Like, it's huge. Okay, this huge number. Okay. And then they know, okay, that's how many families we're going to serve in combination of all of our goals. And then that goes up in the office to where they walk in, the first thing they see is 800 families, or the first thing they see is 150 families. Like, whatever that location's commitment is up everywhere. So putting a visual to where you can't forget it is huge. We also do that many hearts on a big poster board. And as agents serve families, and if there's an ISA on it, so the agent makes up half the heart, their face makes up half the heart, and the ISA's face makes up the other half of the heart. And every team meeting, we're filling the hearts of how many families we serve towards the commitment. So it's never forgotten. Like, the commitment is never forgotten because we built processes in place to make sure. And so that's how we do it in each of our locations.
So good. The heart thing, half the heart is the person who sets the appointment. The other half is the agent. That's so smart, because I've never found a way to connect them together in a way to celebrate other than through payment. And this is a cultural way to do it.
Yeah, it's a cultural way of realizing, 80% of the 2,200 families that Empower Home served last year came through our ISA department. So 80% of that revenue would not be realized if it weren't for our ISAs. And so to me, the biggest mistake that I see people make that have ISAs is they minimize their role as lesser than the agent. Well, the truth is that in my organization, they're actually more important, because if it weren't for them booking that appointment, we wouldn't have a family to convert or to serve. And so everything we do, we never recognize an agent without recognizing the ISA that also helped book that family originally. So
that's genius. Tiffany, what do y'all do to make this thing live and breathe all year?
I think one of the things that we do really well in our team meeting every week, we look at numbers. It's called Numbers Matter. And we literally look at different pieces of numbers. I'll always find one thing that's positive, but we look at the reality every time. So they're focused on where we should be right now and the reality of where we are. There's usually some sort of visual tracker for that. Are we on track? Are we ahead? Are we behind? Because just knowing where you are with a goal for an entire year it's too much. You don't know, you'll get behind and not know it if you don't know where you should be tracking. So comparing where you are in the year to where you should be in the year for the goal, and where does that connect? And our agents have an automatic protocol if they're behind that automatically goes into effect if they have not done whatever that was that they committed to. They created it. It's changed over the years of what it is. Sometimes it would be like, hey, we're going to do a bold 100 and like have 100 real estate conversations in one day if we're behind by the 15th of the month. There's automatic protocols set in place that is not, they decided it. Numbers don't lie. It is what it is. And we go on. And we end that meeting with everybody shotgunning around, reminding everybody else why they get up every day. What is their big why? Why are they working? So we're reminded that Amber wants to be a blessing to her kids and not a burden. We're remembering that Anne wants to send her kids to private school. Kylie wants to pay off debt. Like, we know why everybody is showing up every day. It reminds you as the person saying it, but you also remember we're part of a team. And if I don't show up, Kylie doesn't get to pay off debt. And Amber could be a burden to her kids when she retires. All these different things that matter deeply to people. So you focus on the numbers, you set up a protocol, and then you remember why you're doing it and why you're showing up.
Love it. Kymber, what are your tricks to make this live and breathe?
For me, it was a lot of self-leadership, right? I have 4 amazing and incredible boys where they teach me almost daily that they can see me better than they can hear me. And so this idea of like, I set the pace. And if something didn't happen in your business this year, I would ask you to hold up the mirror and say, like, where's my DNA in the fact that we're picking up the Google document for the first time since November of last year to look at it. And so it has been a game changer for me. I have had an on again, off again relationship with my 411 over the last decade. And so I feel like this is finally a season of on. And part of it is that I made it accessible to the entire team. So I had to lead the way. If I was asking them to deliver a 411 to me and we were going to go over it in their one-on-one, but nobody saw mine, they didn't have access to my that I said I needed actually to lead the way. And so I have an open Google document. There's probably 20 people, right, who see my 411 every single week. And so that means it's an extra layer of accountability for me as the leader to be really, really clear that I'm also defining what is my top 20%. I'm making it clear across the businesses that I'm involved in, right, what it means for me to actually hit the goal. One that allows the team that supports me to be very, very clear on how we win. And it also allows everybody else to be like, okay, this is legit. This is a serious commitment that we're making. What I found is it provides amazing visibility for me as a leader, even people that I don't directly manage, just being able to pop in, look, make a comment. Because remember, that 411 is going to reflect professional and personal. And so it's allowing me to have a really good connectivity to what's happening in the organization and really sets the tone that these commitments we're making are real commitments. We got the top of the layer, that's got it. One of the other big changes we made a couple years ago was when we did that big business plan, that GPS, it has actual names by each of the strategy. And what we found was that sometimes everybody was so committed to something, but nobody really owned it. And so nobody had an ability to actually move it. And so this idea of who was the quarterback for the thing, right? Who was going to really own the thing? And that might mean they have to grab Sarah and they have to grab Seychelle and they have to grab the rest of the team. But at the end of the day, they're committed to showing back up to the team with that deliverable done. And so that was a big changer. Instead of just having this beautiful document that the team was responsible for, that we really drilled down. And then that priority shows up in their 411. So that has a through line across the organization. And then we're really able to see it move the ball forward. So it really, for me, self-leadership has been a really important hack and really calendaring it out. I realized I had to model what I expected from my team if I wanted us to be on track for goals.
So good. All right, ladies, I want to switch gears. I want to tell a real estate story. If you go back far enough, and I'm talking ancient Athens, you will find a philosopher named Epicurus. And he bought this amazing villa in downtown Athens, which is this bustling city. And while the other philosophers of his day were getting large groups together to hear them lecture, he got small groups together in the garden. to talk about life's deepest questions. And I'd like to invite you to our garden. Will you join us?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Seychelle, I'm going to start with you, and the question is going to be the same for everybody. If you could go back in time and you could visit with the 19-year-old Seychelle, what would you tell her?
I think I would actually say to the 19-year-old Seychelle, which, by the way, I was 22 when I got into real estate. So let's just put that into perspective. I think I would go back and say, put more time in for fun, more time in for yourself. You don't have to take it so seriously out the gate. I was a really serious, Jason, I was calling at 19, I was calling CEOs on Madison Avenue. I was a very hard driving college kid. And so I think I would go back and say, plan in more fun, plan in more joy. And also, I think a lot of us have had an entrepreneurial spirit for a long time. And in that, to give yourself permission to get clear on what the business gives you and what the business should be for. I would love to have learned that in my early 20s instead of constantly giving the business what it needs. Also look at what the relationship is for what it gives you. So those would be my 2 pieces of advice.
There's an old saying that energy is wasted on the youth because you have no idea what to do next. And I think it's so true. I love all that. Sarah, your 19 self, you can go back and have any conversation you want. What do you tell her?
I say, Sarah, you cannot make an impact if you're dead. Make your health your number one. You will be a better friend. You'll be a better wife. You'll be a better mom, a better business owner if you make your health a priority. Both spiritual health and physical health are number one. And both of those impact the impact that we can make on the world. I always think back, boy, if I was a healthier version of myself for that decade, what would that look like these days? So it's the one area that I wish I would have done better as a leader in demonstrating health is so, so, so important. It literally is the domino that affects every part of our lives. And so make your health a priority because you cannot make an impact if you're dead.
So good. You can't make an impact if you're dead. Yes. Tiffany, you can go back, talk to yourself at 19. What are you saying?
I think I would focus on who I am because at 19, you don't know who you are. That's the whole point of your 20s and your 30s.
For us boys in the audience, 45 and you still have no idea who you are. So preach on, sister.
So, I think I would go back and I would say you are an experience creator. You're going to do that in a lot of different ways. And when you lose that is when you lose yourself. When you forget that that's who you are, that's when you lose your way. And so you can do that in everything. And so be your weird self and do your weird things. And people are going to look at you and say, that is not going to work. And do it anyway, because it will, because that's one of your superpowers. And so lean into these ideas you have about how you can create impact and experiences that change people's lives, because that's who you are.
Fantastic. Kymber, you can go back in time. What do you tell yourself?
Don't play small. You're going to have a big life. And so swing for the fence, take the risk. Failure is actually how you go forward. And we're all going to fail. There was this idea sometimes that we play small because we're trying to control the thing. We don't want to fail. And the answer is that the only thing that separates you from people that are great is that they were just willing to fail. And they were willing to get back up and do it again and learn and do it again. And so I would say you're going to have a big life. And so that means you're going to have to make big risk and go out there and build a big life.
I think that is beautiful. And if you are anything like me, you're wondering, how do I get more of this? Ladies, how do people find you? How can they get your voice in their head as often as I do? Where should they look?
Every single Monday, we have a episode drop, and we've got tons and tons of content on there. You can also go to empirebuildingpodcast.com. You can follow us on social media, and we are always wanting to share and inspire and encourage not just female business owners, but all business owners to not just build a big business, but to build an even bigger life, because that alone will have such an impact on our world and make our world a better place.
There it is, friends. You can't get enough of it. I know, because I can't. Ladies, thank you so much for the education, and thank you so much for your hearts. How much you care is so abundantly obvious to me. It is no wonder you are all so successful.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
There it is, friends. It doesn't take much to see why these humans are so wildly successful. They are living big lives, they are running big businesses, and they are very purposeful about how they do it. When you listen to Sarah talk about the puzzle pieces and exactly how she runs that event, when you listen to Seychelle talk about the need for white space, when you listen to Kymber, and the quote for me of the entire day, "My kids are better at seeing me than hearing me, so I have to live that way," I thought it was pure genius. At the end of the day, this comes down to a few simple things. Number one, if I make a plan that doesn't get me to a goal that I actually want, what was the use of the plan? This is this whole idea of planning yourself before you plan your business. Take time to sit back and ask the question, what is it that I want out of life? Is this the business that will fund the life I want to live? You know, I know some of the personal stories. When Tiffany says it's possible to spend 2 years building something only to look up and realize that you never wanted to live that life, she is speaking from experience. Go back and listen to her episode of this show, and she has this epiphany that if you're not careful, you end up building somebody else's dream, not your own. Gary Keller talks about whose life are you living. He says that he looks up one day and is biting his nails. He's got a whole mouthful of hand, and he can't figure out why he's doing that. And then it dawns on him. He had watched his dad, who he loved dearly, bite his nails his whole life. And he looks up and says, oh my gosh, whose life am I living? That's the first choice. What do you want life to look like? Then number two, and this came up with all of them, if you're going to go do this, you better have fun. Friends, building a business that's void of fun isn't a business at all. It's a prison. And I don't want that for any of you. Take what David Huffaker said and what you heard today and put these things together and make an amazing forward for your company. On a special note, I love the Empire Building podcast. I think it's fantastic and I listen every week. There is a reason why almost 1 million downloads of this podcast have happened. What's the reason? Because these people are changing lives every time they open their mouth. You see, the reason you love this show is because you're a journeyer, and journeyers recognize it in other journeyers, and we all come together in community. Let me just tell you, all of the Empire Builders are wild. And I mean wild journeyers. That's what you love about it. If you haven't heard it, give it a listen. Here's the takeaway. All of us are going to think about the last year, and then we're going to project what we want out of the new year. If you don't spend the time to figure out what you want, it's likely that you won't get it. Go forth and do likewise. There it is. That wraps another episode. Friends, I don't know what you're taking out of this. I really don't. I'll tell you what I want you to be taking out of it, which is these are the people that are having tremendously big lives. And the reason it's happening is because they're setting up the models and systems to do just that. Gary Keller told me that leadership is teaching people how to think so that they do the things they need to do when they need to do them, so that ultimately they get the things they want when they want to have them. And that's what I want for you. You're all leaders, but it begins with leading ourselves. If you're enjoying this podcast, I want you to click the subscribe button anywhere that you get your podcasts. We want to be the voice in your head every single week, and every week we're dropping new content. We also send out a newsletter at the conclusion of every show to make sure that you get the highest points in the models and systems that were discussed. So if you want to sign up, I need your name and your email address. Head over to the millionaireagentpodcast.com. millionaireagentpodcast.com. Enter your name and your email address, and every week that newsletter will be in your box. Friends, you just went on a journey. I hope that what happens between now and the next time we meet is absolutely wonderful for you. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not KWRI and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information. Warning. You must comply with the TCPA and any other federal, state, or local laws, including for B2B calls and texts. Never call or text a number on any do not call list, and do not use an auto dialer or artificial voice or pre-recorded messages without proper consent. Contact your attorney to ensure your compliance.